telling it like it is. Today we are super excited because we have a wonderful author here with us today, Georgia Shaffer. Very excited to have her, and she's written this beautiful book. I'm just going to turn it around. A Gift of Morning Glories. And what I love about it is the way you spell morning. This is unbelievable. So let me tell you a little bit about Georgia. You are actually a credentialed life coach. How long have you been doing that?
For about 12 years. I was early on, I started in coaching.
And then also you're a licensed psychologist in Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Okay, and then this is not the only book you've written. So before we get into that, could you tell us about some of the other books you've written?
One of my popular books is also Taking Out Your Emotional Trash.
Oh, I love that.
And Avoiding the 12 Relationship Mistakes Women Make. That's about our relational blind spots. You know we have visual blind spots, but how many of us have been taught what our relational blind spots are? Another one is 12 Smart Choices to Finding the Right Guy.
Oh my, I think I need to just like hang out with her. Where were you when I was dating? So wait a minute. For all of our single ladies watching out there, is this something that maybe they should read before?
No, absolutely.
And so you would think it maybe guide them or
avoid
pitfalls. We need to avoid pitfalls, ladies.
Yeah, there's certain pain we can avoid. There's certain pain in life we can't. So why not avoid what we can?
That's right. Well, like I told you, I love this book. And, you know, let me ask you just a general question. What sparked you to want to write a book like this? I mean, the title, the spelling of it is different. You'll be able to see it down on the screen there. But A Gift of Morning Glories.
Well, I went through some really rough times. My life fell apart. I was diagnosed with cancer. It came back 6 months later. I was told I had a 2% chance to be alive in 10 years. My son was only 8 years old, which meant I had 2% chance to see him graduate from high school. And I got a bone marrow transplant, which is extremely aggressive, not to mention chemo and radiation. And when those treatments were all done, my son said, later, he said, "Mom, you were a ghost in a shell during that time." Then I lost my job because I was too weak to go back to work, and I went through a divorce. So I had 3 major losses, and I was a licensed psychologist. And as I was trying to figure out how do you reconstruct your life, how do you rebuild your life, because I looked at my future and thought things would never get better. And it was like God just stepped me through the process. You know, a lot of times people know, well, we got to grieve our losses. Well, even when you grieve them, you still haven't rebuilt your life. So I'm real practical. So give me some guidelines, like a roadmap. What does this look like? And I have lots of stories. So it came out of my heart.
Wow. So let me ask you, Georgia, did you know the Lord when you were going through all of this?
I would have told you I always believed in Jesus, but it wasn't until the bone marrow transplant, when I was at death's door, that I really experienced Jesus.
Wow.
And then somebody said, I was telling somebody the story, how he was so real during that time when I was just about dying, and they listened and they said, well, he was with you in the tough times. Tell me about your daily relationship.
Wow. And you know, one of the things about that, Georgia, and you know, those that are watching, is many times it's in those valleys. You know, I mean, I always say, I think we grow in the valleys. We don't grow in the mountaintop moments.
No, that's
so
true.
And that's why maybe that person asked, you know, what about those day to day? You know, sometimes we have listeners, and you might be watching today and you see how beautiful and exciting and amazing she looks, but not to think that, you know, she's actually gone through what you might be facing right now. And then you mentioned divorce. So did that happen, if I can peer in there, did that happen during your cancer, or is that kind of after?
We were separated at the time, and that just, you know, sort of brought everything to a close. But, you know, I say in the book, this isn't a once and done process when you're dealing with loss. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, not related to the breast cancer. So, and then I was engaged and went through a broken engagement. So rebuilding, you know, I remember thinking, you wrote the book, now, you know, you got to live it. It's a process.
It is a process, and I think that's encouraging. And because we're discussing rebuilding after loss, you know, what are some challenges? I mean, you're a licensed psychologist and a life coach, and even you have faced challenges. What were some of those challenges?
I felt really hopeless. It's terrible to say, but I could not see how my life could get better.
Yeah.
So how could it? Well,
Right.
we know walking with Jesus is a faith walk. And so there were so many days, and I was so weak physically. Now looking back, that's how you get to see what God can do. When you can't do anything, you get to experience Him. And as time went on, I realized I was growing in inner strength. I was becoming a better person, even though I would have never chosen all that. And it was a lot of I was depressed at times.
Wow.
I didn't think life was going to get better. I didn't know how to do this. But shortly after everything fell apart, and they say this is true, in the midst of stress, if you can find some sense of meaning and purpose. And so it was early on, like, I want to figure this out, and I want to help other people. How do you do this?
So do you think you were thinking that while you were going through the process? Like, God's got to be using this for something. There's got to be more than just my pain and suffering and my challenge. That maybe right in the midst of this, God really had a plan for you. And obviously from this book and the other books you've written, you've touched so many lives. You wrote about a time of grief being like a shaken up bottle of soda. What do you mean by that?
Well, one young girl, she was 31, and her husband unfortunately died, and she said, I'm like a shaken up bottle of soda. All the emotional pressure is inside. And I've been using it ever since. I said, can I use that? Because it's such a pretty, a good picture. When we shake up a bottle of soda, all that carbonation is built up inside. And if I had a bottle here and I ask you to open it, would you want to open it after I?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Because it would make a big mess, and that's what we are. The anger, the pain, the sadness, sometimes guilt, frustration, we're all pent up inside. But if I did want to open that bottle of soda, I would crack the lid a little bit and leave a little bit of the pressure out. And that's how one of the parts of grieving is. We deal with the pain a little bit at a time, because if we try to do it all at once, like opening a bottle of soda, it's a big mess.
And Georgia, I think there's people listening today that maybe are in the middle of this right now. And I think sometimes when we do have a relationship with Christ, we feel sometimes like we should have it together. We should be able to handle this. Did you ever have moments where you thought to yourself, like, why am I letting myself fall apart? I trust in a big, great God. Did you ever go through those thoughts?
Oh, I hear that all the time. I just need to be strong in the Lord. And that's absolutely true. But in our culture, we have this mentality that we shouldn't have to suffer.
That's right.
Christ suffered on the cross. Now, it didn't end there, and our story's not going to end there. But suffering is real, and sometimes there's not a pain killer on earth that can take away the pain we're dealing with. And so, blessed are those who mourn. And just recently a friend said to me, well, she's grieving a big loss, and she said, well, what does it look like in my daily life? How do I do this? And so people struggle with that process. And yes, you pray to God, and you be grateful for what you still do have, and you don't lose sight He is a loving God no matter what your life looks like.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean you don't suffer.
And I love that, because people need to understand that they're not alone. You're not the only woman going through this. You're not the only guy going through this. You're talking about a woman of God who has studied, who has written, and she's faced these things. So let me ask you a question. Now, you make a comment in this book, or it's one of your core beliefs, that you say about 6 to 18 months after a devastating loss is actually one of the more difficult times. Why do you think that, Georgia?
Because it's usually at that period, especially like a year, loved ones start to, withdraw their support. And for instance, let's say somebody went through a divorce, and you think, well, it's been a year, they should be better.
Right.
So you have the withdrawal of support. Then if there was any shock and numbness, let's say it was a death, that starts to wear off around 6 to 18 months. And then what happens? Reality sets in. If there was any shock and numbness, it's like, oh, my life has changed, and it's changed forever. And so it's that period of time that we think we should be better, and the people in our lives think, hey, it's been a year and a half. Well, depending on what you're going through, that can be a real tough time. one young girl, when I was speaking, she's in her 20s and her mother had died of breast cancer, and she came up to me and she said, my friends keep saying it'll get better, but she said, it's been a year and it's not. And I said, eventually it will, but short term it'll probably get worse.
Right.
And she just had this look like, oh, I'm not crazy. And I said, you're not. And so that's an important thing to get out there, that people understand.
Yeah. I think we compare ourselves too many times, and maybe you know another lady that has gone through something devastating, and you say, well, she got over this. Why am I still dealing with this? And you know, you need to know, I think that you would agree, probably, Georgia, is that for each one of you, it's different. And it is a reality. In the beginning, we get a lot of friends and wanting to cook for us and wanting to do things, when, especially if we have somebody pass away in our life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself, I have young friends that are widowed today, and after about 6 months, 12 months, they're on with their own life, and here she is sitting there in the reality. Let me ask you, what would you say to listeners today who feel like their life has fallen apart? You know, will things get better, Georgia?
Yeah, eventually. But you gotta, it's like a compost pile. I'm a gardener. And on my compost pile, I put all dead things. Dead flowers, dead grass clippings, dead leaves. And then I add some water and maybe a little soil. And over time, that breaks down to this rich humus. And when you mix that with other soil and plant a plant, there is a dramatic difference. And so we got to go through that time where all these dead things break down, and eventually we have this fertile soil for a new life. But you know, you got to go through the pain in order to grow, but absolutely eventually you can get to that place, but you got to persevere in the meantime and not give up.
And that's our message today, is don't give up no matter what you're going through. You know, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a reader, but I still like the paper book. You know I've got my Kindle and I got my iPad, and I know you guys have all these modern things, but sometimes getting alone and grabbing a book, especially when it comes to a topic. You know, one of the things I like to do, Georgia, is I actually like to highlight things and go, you know, that really touched me, because I can go back to that and draw strength. And so, you know what I'd love for you to do, Georgia? If you would just talk to those that are listening right now, and you know, just pray for somebody that could be in the middle of a battle. They just feel hopeless. They feel like their life has been just taken through whatever their trial is, and just say a prayer for them.
Absolutely. If you feel like that, and you, like me, look towards your future and think things can never get better, read the book of Ruth. That was one thing. 4 short chapters. Those 2 women, they had no future and a hope as widows in ancient times. But in those 4 short chapters, God transformed their lives into hope and blessing. And so remember the verse in Psalm 126. I pray, Lord, right now, anybody who's listening, Psalm 126, verse 5, those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. Just remember, you don't plant a seed one day and get a flower the next. It's a process, a step-by-step process, but you will one day reap with songs of joy.
Well, we just thank you, and Lord, we just thank you, and we just stand on those promises. We stand on your word. We know that victory is around the corner, and we just give you praise and glory right now. And so if that was you and you're watching, you know, don't be afraid to give us a comment. Let us know. We're committed to pray for every one of those comments that come in. You know, let us know, because we don't want you out there standing alone. You need to know that there's people behind you that believe in the same God that has brought hope to your life. Once again, her book is called A Gift of Morning Glories, and it's by Georgia Shaffer. You guys can find this anywhere bookstores. Can they get it online as well? So Amazon or any of these, you can download it for all you digital readers. Hey, Georgia, thanks so much for coming in. You are an absolute delight, and you just have given me hope today, and I know you've done that for those watching.